I brought my son a handmade quilt for his new baby. He looked at it and said, "This looks like something from a dumpster. We don't want your poor person crap." His wife sneered, "You can't even afford diapers, but you think you're welcome here?" They closed the door before I could reply. I sat on the curb with the quilt on my lap, heart beating through the stitches. The next day, I mailed a box to CPS with photos I took over the past month and a letter in my handwriting they'll never forget. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I've been poor my whole life. Not trailer park TV poor, just regular working class, invisible to everyone poor. I raised my son, Matt, on my own after his father split before his first birthday. I worked nights, cleaned houses on weekends, drove a beat-up Taurus that leaked oil for 5 years. But my kid always had food, school supplies, and a safe home. I didn't date much, never brought strange men around, never touched drugs or drank. I just worked and raised my boy. Matt was a good kid. Smart, quiet,
kind.
I did everything I could to make sure he had a better life than I did. I clipped coupons, skipped meals, and sold handmade scarves online just to save a little money for his college. When he got into Ohio State with a small scholarship, I damn near cried from pride. Watching him walk across that stage at graduation felt like proof that I didn't mess everything up. Then he met Erin. She was from money. Not filthy rich, but her parents owned a marketing firm in Columbus. They paid for her car, her apartment, her tuition. She had a platinum card before she had her degree. The first time Matt brought her home, she looked uncomfortable just sitting in my living room. I made lasagna. She picked at it and said she was gluten sensitive, then had 2 slices of regular pizza an hour later. I tried not to judge. I wanted to be kind. I wanted to be the mother-in-law who didn't push, didn't pry. But from day one, I could tell she looked down on me. She always called me Maureen. Never Matt's mom, never Mrs. Parker. Just my name, like I was a receptionist. Still, I stayed polite. When they got married, I wasn't even part of the wedding party. Erin's mom did everything. I had to ask for the address to the bridal shower. I wasn't told when the dress fitting was. I got a last-minute email with seating information for the reception, table 11 by the kitchen. But I told myself it wasn't about me. I showed up, gave them a photo album I'd made of Matt's childhood, and kept my mouth shut. They didn't even look through it at the table. Erin said, "Oh, cute," and handed it to a friend who shoved it under a chair. I found it after the reception, still there. I took it home. After that, things just got worse. Matt stopped calling regularly. Erin didn't include me in holidays unless I asked. When I sent a card for their anniversary, she never responded. But I kept showing up, trying, because he was my only son. About 5 months ago, Matt called and said Erin was pregnant. I cried when I heard, not in front of him, but later in the kitchen while washing dishes. I'd always wanted to be a grandma. I said, "I'd love to help in any way I can." He paused. "We'll see how Erin feels about visitors." I pretended not to feel the cold in that sentence. I started knitting again. I used to do it when Matt was little, scarves, baby hats, small blankets. This time, I decided to make a quilt. Something real. A gift that mattered. I picked out fabric in soft blues and grays. Sewed his name in block letters at the bottom. Liam. It took me weeks. I worked on it at night after my shift at Kroger. I bled on it once when I pricked my thumb, and instead of tossing that square, I stitched over it. That quilt had me in it. Every thread, every knot, every hour. That was my heart. The baby came early. I found out through a Facebook post Erin's friend tagged her in. I hadn't even been told. I texted Matt. No answer. 3 days later, I drove the hour to their house in Mason. I didn't call ahead. I just showed up with a quilt, folded and tied with a ribbon. I had diapers in the trunk, too. A few gift cards for Target. I just wanted to see them. To hold my grandson. When Matt opened the door, he looked like he hadn't slept in days. Hair messy, eyes sunken. He barely said hi. Erin came up behind him, holding the baby. She didn't smile. "I made something for Liam," I said, offering the quilt. Matt looked at it, his face blank. Then he actually laughed. "This looks like something from a dumpster," he said. I blinked. "We don't want your poor person crap." It didn't even sound like him. Like something he'd rehearsed. Like words that came from her mouth, not his. Erin smirked. "You can't even afford diapers, but you think you're welcome here?" She pulled the baby closer and stepped back. The doors started closing. "Matt," I said. Just his name. He looked at me once. No emotion. Then he closed the door. I stood there on the porch for a long time. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I just sat on the curb with that quilt in my lap. It still smelled like my laundry detergent. I stared at the stitching until the sun started setting. I went home and didn't sleep. The next morning, I made coffee and pulled out an old shoebox I kept under the sink. Inside were receipts, messages, and printed out screenshots from Matt's texts over the past year. Mentions of Erin's anger, her drinking, her throwing things. I'd also taken pictures last time I visited. The place was filthy. Mold in the bottle rack, bags of trash stacked in the hall, an old ashtray in the baby's room. At the time, I didn't want to make waves. I thought maybe they were just stressed. But that visit sat in my chest like a rock. So I saved it all. That morning, I put everything together. Photos, printouts, and a letter I wrote by hand. I wasn't dramatic. I just told the truth. I mailed it certified to the Hamilton County CPS office. Not anonymous. I put my name, my address, and my number. Because I wasn't scared anymore. This wasn't about being insulted or shut out. This was about Liam. That baby didn't ask to be born into this mess. And if Matt was too broken to stand up, then I would. And I wasn't finished. After I sent the box to CPS, I expected silence. Maybe a letter months later. Maybe nothing. I got a call 3 days later. It was a woman named Kendra. She said she was with Hamilton County Child Protective Services and that she'd received my letter and documentation. Her voice was calm, professional. She asked if I could answer some follow-up questions. I said yes. We spoke for 45 minutes. I told her everything I'd seen, how Erin was 6 months pregnant and drinking wine to calm down, how she screamed at Matt on the porch loud enough for the neighbors to hear, how the baby's room was full of garbage bags last I saw it. I told her how they hadn't even told me the baby was born, how I found out through social media. I mentioned the photos I'd taken. Kendra said they'd be sending someone for a wellness check. That should have been it. But of course it wasn't. 2 days later, Matt called me.
No, hello.
What the hell did you do? I didn't answer right away. My heart started pounding, but I kept my voice even. I sent photos and a letter to CPS. Why would you do that? He shouted. You're trying to ruin us? I'm trying to protect that baby, I said. Erin got on the phone. She screamed. She called me a bitter old bitch. Said I was jealous because she had a real family, and I was just some washed-up cashier playing grandma with trash crafts and no money. Then Matt took the phone back and said if I ever contacted them again, they'd get a restraining order. I hung up. I sat on my couch for hours, just still, not moving. All I could think about was Matt's voice, how flat it was, like I wasn't his mother anymore. That weekend, someone egged my car. I don't have security cameras, but I know who it was. Nobody else would have done that. I reported it to the police, but there wasn't much they could do. Just filed a report and moved on. Same thing when my back window got smashed the next week. They told me it was probably kids. I knew better. I started writing everything down. Every text, every voicemail. Erin sent me 3 emails that could only be described as threats. One said, "You don't know what you started, but you'll regret it." Another said I should keep looking over my shoulder. Poor bitch. I took screenshots,
Printed them.
saved everything. About 2 weeks later, Kendra from CPS called again. This time, her tone was different, quieter. She said they'd completed their visit, found enough cause for a second, unannounced check. Erin had been uncooperative, but Matt was present. Kendra said the home was concerning. Dirty bottles, unsafe sleeping setup, no working baby monitor. She said there were signs that Erin might be suffering from untreated postpartum depression, maybe worse. said the report would remain open for now. I thought that would scare them into pulling themselves together. It didn't. Instead, Erin went online. I don't know how she found the Facebook moms groups I follow, but suddenly I started getting DMs. People calling me toxic, dangerous, jealous. One woman sent me a message saying, "No wonder your son hates you." Turns out Erin had posted a long rant in a few of the local parenting groups, said I was mentally unstable, obsessed, and making up lies to hurt a happy family. She posted a picture of the quilt, said it was infested with bugs, that it smelled like mildew and was unsafe for infants. That I tried to force myself into the baby's life by dropping off homemade garbage. I didn't even recognize Matt in the photo she posted. He was sitting next to her, smiling, holding Liam, like none of it ever happened. And maybe the worst part? People believed her. She made me the villain. Painted me like some desperate, crazy old woman who couldn't accept that her son had moved on and had a new family. That I was clinging, needy, vindictive. That I wasn't needed anymore. I stayed offline after that. But I wasn't finished. Because the truth always finds daylight. And I had more of it. I just had to decide what to do with it. About a week after Erin's smear campaign online, I got a letter in the mail. Not a text. Not an email. An actual envelope. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar. It was from Matt. The letter was short. 5 lines. "Mom, I don't know why you did what you did. I don't even know who you are anymore. Erin says if we hear from you again, we're filing a restraining order. This is your final warning. Matt." I sat at my kitchen table and stared at those words. My hands were shaking. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even shocked. I just felt hollow. That's when I decided I needed to get outside of emotion. I needed proof. Real proof. Not just for CPS, but for myself. For anyone who might still believe I was the problem. So I made a phone call to a woman named Tasha. She was the neighbor 2 doors down from Matt and Erin. I'd met her once, a year ago, when I dropped off a casserole after Matt had surgery. She was polite, sweet, had a toddler of her own. I told her who I was. I said, "I'm not trying to make trouble, but have you ever heard things through the walls?" Tasha hesitated. Then she said, "I've been waiting for someone to ask." She told me everything. Erin screams, loud, violent, middle of the night fights, plates thrown, doors slammed. Sometimes the baby cried for hours without being picked up. Once, Tasha had knocked on their door because the crying lasted from midnight until 3 a.m. Erin answered and told her to mind her ***king business. Tasha had called the non-emergency line once, but nothing came of it. Then she said something that froze my blood. "I saw Erin leave the baby alone in the car for almost 15 minutes outside Target last week. I was parked nearby. I didn't know what to do. I asked her if she'd be willing to write a statement. She said yes. I picked it up the next morning. Signed. Dated. She even emailed me the video she'd taken that day from her phone. You could see Liam in his carrier, parked alone. Erin walking back casually with a Starbucks in hand. That changed everything. I sent it straight to Kendra at CPS. This time, I included a note that read, "If something happens to Liam and I stayed silent, I'd never live with myself. Please look at this again." 3 days passed. Then 5. Then one afternoon, I got another phone call. Not from CPS. From a blocked number. It was Matt. He was whispering. He said, "I don't have much time. I just need to know. Did you send that video?" I paused. Yes. He was silent for a moment. Then, "Thank you." I blinked. What? She left him alone again yesterday. CPS came back. They're investigating. I didn't know what to do until that video came in. I can't talk long. She reads my texts now. She's been screaming at the baby mom. "I'm scared." I started to cry. He did too. Then he hung up. It was like a crack had formed in the armor he'd been wearing. Just a sliver of the sun I raised coming through. But it wasn't over. Not even close. 2 days later, I got a visit. A woman from Child Services showed up at my door. Not Kendra, a different caseworker. She said my name had come up during the investigation. They wanted to evaluate me as a potential temporary placement if needed. I stood there in my apron, coffee still brewing behind me, heart pounding. Placement? I asked. For your grandson. Depending on what happens next. Suddenly, everything shifted. After being shut out, insulted, lied about, stalked online, and nearly erased from my own son's life, I was back in the picture. But not because they invited me, because I earned it. Now it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about protection. About stepping in where my son was too broken or afraid to act. And once I was in, I would never let that baby go. But first, I had to watch the whole damn house of cards fall. 3 weeks after that caseworker showed up at my door, I got the call. Matt's voice was hoarse. He sounded like he hadn't slept in days. They took Liam. I sat down, heart racing. Where is he? They placed him in a foster home, just for now. Erin lost it during the interview. Threw a lamp at the caseworker. She tested positive for benzos and alcohol. I closed my eyes. I had prayed it wouldn't come to this, but part of me knew it would. She's in a 72-hour psych hold, Matt said. They're giving me a chance to file for custody, but they're saying I need someone stable to co-sign. Someone with no record, good income, proper housing. You're asking me? A long silence. Then, yes. Please. I'd be lying if I said I didn't pause. This boy, this man had turned his back on me. Let his wife treat me like garbage. Called my handmade quilt dumpster trash. Threatened me with a restraining order. And now, with everything on fire, I was the one he called for help. I said, "You'll need to meet me at the courthouse. You'll tell the judge everything. You'll say out loud what she did, what you let happen, and why you stayed quiet." Another pause. Then, okay. I hung up, and for the first time in months, I smiled. The custody hearing was held in Hamilton County Juvenile Court 2 Mondays later. Matt looked like hell. He hadn't shaved. Wore an old button-up that didn't fit right. Erin didn't show. She was still in inpatient treatment after the psych hold turned into a full psychiatric evaluation. I showed up in my Kroger uniform. Didn't have time to change. When the judge asked Matt to explain what happened, he told the truth. Every piece of it. How Erin screamed at him, locked him out during arguments, slapped him more than once. How she refused to let him feed or change the baby. How she left Liam in the car, twice. How she drank while breastfeeding. How she lied to CPS until the video surfaced. He cried. I didn't. Then it was my turn. The judge asked why I sent the first report. I reached into my purse and pulled out the quilt. Held it up, gently, right there in court. I made this for my grandson, I said. And they slammed the door in my face. Told me I wasn't good enough. Called me trash. But I knew something was wrong in that house, so I said something. Because Liam deserved better. That's why I'm here. The judge was quiet. He looked down at the file in front of him, then said, Mrs. Parker, would you be willing to be Liam's temporary guardian while we complete the reunification plan? I nodded. And just like that, I became a mother again. Liam came to live with me that Thursday. He was tiny. So quiet it broke my heart. He didn't cry at night, just whimpered, like he'd learned already that crying didn't help. I wrapped him in that quilt on his first night home. Not in some grand symbolic way. I just did it because it was soft and warm, and his. And mine. Matt started visiting. At first for an hour a day. Then longer. He helped clean bottles. Changed diapers. Started showing up early. He was different. He apologized. Over and over. Said he didn't know how much control Erin had over him until it all fell apart. How she isolated him from everyone. How he hated himself for letting it happen. I believed him. Not right away, but eventually. Erin tried to fight the custody ruling once she was released. But she failed every drug test. She missed her court-ordered therapy. She skipped visitations. After 4 months, the court terminated her parental rights. Matt was awarded full custody. but only under the condition that I remain co-guardian for the first year.
He didn't argue.
Last week, Liam turned 1. We had cake in my apartment. Just the 3 of us. I took a picture, Matt holding him, both of them smiling. The quilt was draped over the couch behind them. Matt looked at me and said, "You saved him." I looked back and said, "No, I protected him, because that's what I do."
He didn't argue.
Erin still posts about me online sometimes. Claims I stole her child. Calls me a vindictive hag. Says I ruined her life. Maybe I did.
But I sleep just fine.
Because every night I check the locks, turn out the lights, and kiss my grandson goodnight with that quilt pulled up to his chin. And if protecting him means being the villain in her story, then so be it. I've been called worse by better people.